Okay, so we're going to see that edge a lot clearer once we get a little bit of ebonizing solution on there. It's going to look real good. Okay, so these just came back from the wire wheel, and I'm going to zoom in so you can really, whoops, you can really see what that wire wheel is doing to the edges of the wood. And I chose to do one surface, so this will be the inside surface of the wood. And what this is a really wide threshold door is going to go in here. And so this is to hold the door, but it's very weathered and stuff like that. So what I did is I put it in the wire wheel and let it kind of look like it's been aged by weather and just all kinds of stuff. And I'm pretty rough with it. That side I didn't really age. I did this edges, but I didn't do the middle. And you see that's what I'm getting there. You see those shadows in there. So I did that to 3 pieces. That'll make the door. This is the top of the jamb. Okay, this is the other side. There, see, I haven't done anything there really, but that side. And then when I put a ebonizing solution on this, what that'll do is it'll turn a grayish color, very dark, but then I can come back and lighten up areas and show where it looks really, really good. So those are ready. Now above those, there is one kind of like a header board that goes across the entire structure, and that's what this is. And it goes up here like this, and that goes over the door, but you see that there's a gap there. And that gap is between this door jamb that I'm creating here and a window that fits in here. So the window is going to be there, but it's also going to be kind of failing over here, you know. So, you know, it won't have a completed window. And I don't even know if this will go that far. I think I might cut this back. This is editing Bill. I'm editing over here. And what I wanted to say was, in this whole process that I'm going through, the process is solid, so I'm going to explain that. But I broke this thing off here. To there. Oh, oops. At this point, when I'm gluing this on here, I'm not really going for structure. I'm going for look. I'm going for effect. Now, from the reference pictures, it looks like it's, you know, very, very, it's not cobbled together, but everything is real loose and real fluid. So I was trying to work with that. But man, and then working with it until I get all the way to the end of this, it's going to look pretty flimsy. I just wanted to throw that out there. Thanks very much. Let's get back to it. In the prior scenes, you could see that I carved 2 little notches in that header board, and then I just glued the 2 uprights into it. Worked pretty good. And now what I'm trying to do here is set it into the existing wall. Right along this ridge, I just did a little knife cut, then I'll line it up to the end and kind of mark where I need to go. And then I'll take it off to the side, do that cut, and cut this notch. So there's my little notch. Now I'll just bring in that one unifying board that goes across the top of the, you know, the door frame and the windows, and that'll give me an idea as to where the window is going to go. I want to show you how I put together the window, just like the major stuff. These little guys inside, they're just little strips cut and placed in there. But the construction of this might be a little confusing. So here is a little diagram that I made. So there's 2 sides, bottom, top. The top's a little bit longer, and in the top I did grooves. I kind of did these grooves, and so I've got some pieces of wood here that I cut up to show you how I did the different joints that I used on this. This groove is just, you know, I took my saw and I cut it just a little bit just to kind of get a groove going. And then I went into it with my file. A smaller file than this, of course. This is to scale that I'm working on. So I've just got a little file in there to go in there. After I did that, I took this side of it and just beveled each side of this with, you know, my sanding stick. And by beveling those two sides, it just gave me a nice indexing point. You know, it won't twist on me. It'll stay straight up and down, you know. So that's the first thing I did. And like I said, I did that along the top. I did that on the original as well. I just made a groove there and a groove there, and then put these two sides in it. Now for these bottom two pieces, what I did down here is I did a 45-degree angle. You don't have to. I kind of like doing it, and I'll show you why. Here's the two pieces. You can do just like that with super glue. That's what I use for these. It's just super glue. And it's gonna be just fine. Like this or like this. You want to be consistent. So in example, if this is the side and here's the bottom, then I want both sides, you know, coming in here and then the bottom the same. That way you've got two same side pieces. Or you could do it, doesn't matter, you just want to be consistent, or it'll be cattywampus, you know, if you do like that. So just make sure they're like that. The other way to do it is like I did, and that is with, I'm going to switch them, with a 45-degree angle cut. And I think that looks nice. That's what I did here. There's a 45-degree angle cut there and on the diagram. And, you know, some folks don't do it because it's like, well, you know, gosh, it's so small because, you know, this is pretty small. And sometimes the wood is kind of hard to work with. So I'm going to show you a simple way to make a 45-degree cut, or bevel is what it's technically called. It's a bevel on a piece of wood. And it's just as simple as taking, I'm going to turn it around so it's easier to hold. I take the piece that I want my bevel on, and I take a similar piece that has got a square cut end, and I just set it there, okay? And then when that's there, I make a mark. That's that red line there. So now, if I look on the end, I don't typically do this when I'm actually making one. I did this for the example. You know, you've got a line now from there to there, because when you're doing a 45-degree cut, that perfect 45 is this distance is the same from here to here, and then you just connect the two. So that's all I did. You know, I took this right here, I put it there, I made my line, and then I connected that edge right there with that line. That's a 45-degree. Now it's a lot easier to cut that because I've got this line. So all I do is I use either a file or a sanding stick, or I like to use these. This is just a nice small super sharp chisel. You know, even on the small stuff, I use those. And then I'll just kind of cut down from here. And as long as I stay on this side of the line, and as long as I don't cut that bottom, I just, you know, slowly cut away all this material. And when I'm done, if that is a flat surface, I'll have a 45-degree angle. So that's how I do it. That's just a real easy way to make sure you get a 45. You don't have to have a gauge. I mean, it's nice to have a gauge. You know, you can throw a gauge up there and see it. And if you want to draw it out, but a lot of times, you know, in scale model building, you know, if I try to, you know, mark this on the end, gosh, that's going to be hard to see. But it's a lot easier to see if I mark it on the side. As a matter of fact, I've got a mark there. I don't know if you can see it in the camera. That's there to that bottom edge. So that is how I did the joinery on this. It's very, very simple. Okay, so there it is. Now I need to get it in there to dry. It's all funky, but that's okay. I even got some paper on the back there. Now it's time for our ebonizing solution, and all I'm doing here is I'm painting it on. It just takes one coat. The ebonizing solution is vinegar and steel wool that has been put together. There's a whole process for it. It's not hard to do, but if you've got some store-bought, just take little strips like this. This is how I kind of like to do it. See how it reacts with the wood that you're working with, and then you can progress to your other wood. Once these guys are done, I'll apply them to the inside of the door jamb and the inside of the window, and we're ready to assemble the whole wood apparatus or piece or whatever. With the entire wood part now all glued together, and I've got those little tiny pieces inside the frame of the window and the door, now I'm using a wash. And it's a little bit of mix. I mix a little bit of the deck tan in with the desert yellow, and I'm washing the entire thing. Now this looks like it's going on very heavy, but what I'm doing is I'm putting a wash on, and then eventually I'm going to wash it away with just water. So that's the next step. Now we're using just water, plain water, and I sometimes will go back to my palette and grab some, but in essence what I'm doing is I'm washing away the paint with water. You'll see I'm blotting my brush away a little bit on the paper towel below. Even sometimes I'll find I need a little bit more paint, so I'll bring some back in, but then I go back to the wash and I'm literally scrubbing parts of this to get rid of the paint and have it just where I want. Next, it's dry brushing. And the nice thing is I've got a little drying cabinet, so this is only about 30 minutes. It comes back bone dry, and that's really important. Bone dry when you're dry brushing is important because you're not trying to blend. Blending is what we did last time. That was with water and stuff like that. We wanted to get those colors to blend together. But with dry brushing, we need high contrast. So we need your paint color and your base material, whatever that is, the model, the wood, whatever. We need those two things to be very contrasty. So that is the key. Dry brush, dry model, and then we get some really nice texture coming out of this. Okay, we're finally at assembly. We're not done. Remember, we've got some final painting to do, but with the assembly, this is where the stability of the entire piece comes together. You know, we looked earlier about how flimsy this little piece of wood apparatus is that I built up, but once the foam gets in here, it's going to be nice and sturdy. Now at this time, as I'm placing them in here, I'm being really careful to make sure I've got the proper relief, or the wood is sticking out a little bit proud of the rock. In the reference photo, it's like that, you know, and it creates a little bit of shadow. I'm exaggerating that a little bit. I'm having the wood stick out a little bit more because it's such a great element. I want to use all that it can give me, meaning shadow, texture, a break between the rock. All of those things are going to go into making this a very intriguing element to look at. So I'm very carefully aligning everything. Once it's all aligned, I'll clamp it up, and then once it's dried, then it's time for final painting and weathering.